37 calls she hasn't picked up once.
You really think he won't notice the transfers?
He still thinks we're saving for a kitchen renovation.
It's time to show my wife who she messed with.
I called her 37 times. I know the exact number because I counted them the next morning, scrolling through my call log with numb fingers while the coffee machine beeped in the kitchen like nothing in the world had changed. 37 calls. Each one rang out to voicemail. Each one chipped away at the story I was telling myself. She's fine, she's driving, her phone is on silent. She fell asleep early at a friend's place. Maya and I had been married for 6 years. 6 years of shared grocery runs, lazy Sunday mornings, inside jokes that no one else would ever understand. She was the kind of woman who left little sticky notes on the bathroom mirror. "You're brilliant, don't forget it." And I was the kind of man who believed every single word she wrote. So when she didn't come home that night, I didn't think betrayal. I thought accident. I thought hospital. I sat on the edge of our bed in the dark, running worst-case scenarios through my head, each one worse than the last. I pictured her car flipped on the side of the highway. I pictured a doctor asking me to identify her belongings. I called the local hospitals twice. I almost called the police. By 4 a.m., I had moved to my home office downstairs. Sleep was out of the question. I sat in my leather chair, the one Maya always joked made me look like a retired professor, and stared at my phone screen until my eyes burned. At 6:30 a.m., an email arrived. No subject line, no sender name, just a string of random characters in the address field. The kind of email most people would delete without opening, assuming it was spam or a phishing attempt. I almost did. My thumb hovered over the trash icon. Then I noticed the attachment, a single audio file, 42 seconds long. I don't know what I expected. Maybe a ransom demand. Maybe a stranger telling me they found Maya's phone on the road somewhere. Maybe her own voice, scared and asking for help. I pressed play. The first thing I heard was her laugh. That specific laugh. The one she saved for when she was genuinely amused, head tilted back, completely relaxed. I had heard it 1,000 times across dinner tables and movie theaters and late-night phone calls back when we were still dating. It was the laugh that made me fall in love with her. And then a man's voice cut through. "You really think he won't notice the transfers?" Maya's voice came back, casual and warm, like she was discussing weekend plans. "Baby, I handle the household accounts. He doesn't even open the bank statements. I've been moving money for the last 4 months, and he still thinks we're saving for a kitchen renovation." My stomach dropped so fast, I thought I was going to be sick right there on the carpet. The man laughed. "Hand the property titles?" "Already done. His mother's land, the duplex on 9th Street, the storage units, all of it rerouted through the shell company you set up. By the time he figures out what happened, the paper trail will point straight back to him. I've already drafted a set of documents that make it look like he was running a fraud scheme through his own accounting firm." That's my girl. "Victor, I'm serious. He's going to walk into a financial crime investigation with his name on every single page, and he won't even see it coming." The audio ended. 42 seconds. That's all it took to demolish 6 years of marriage, a decade of trust, and every single memory I thought was real. I sat there for a long time. I don't know how long. The coffee machine beeped again. A garbage truck rumbled past the house. The neighbor's dog barked at something. The whole world just kept moving, like it didn't care that mine had just collapsed. My first instinct was to drive to wherever she was and confront her. I wanted to play the recording on full volume and watch her face crumble. I wanted to scream. I wanted answers. Then the accountant in me kicked in. I had spent 15 years of my career untangling financial messes for clients, tracing hidden accounts, spotting forged signatures, flagging fraudulent filings. I knew exactly how a frame job worked because I had helped victims of frame jobs rebuild their lives from the wreckage. And right now, sitting in my dark office at 6:30 in the morning, I realized I was about to become one of those victims. Unless I moved first. I played the recording again, then a third time. I listened to every word like I was auditing a client's books. Cold, clinical, detached. I stripped the emotion out of it and focused on the facts. Fact 1. Maya had been transferring my money into offshore accounts for at least 4 months. Fact 2. She had forged documents using my name to create a fake fraud trail. Fact 3. A man named Victor was involved, and he had set up a shell company to receive the stolen assets. Fact 4. They were planning to pin the entire scheme on me. Fact 5. If Maya filed those forged documents before I could prove they were fake, I would be arrested. I saved the audio file to 3 separate locations: my personal cloud, an encrypted USB drive in my desk drawer, and my work email drafts folder. Then I deleted the original email from my inbox and cleared the trash. If Maya checked my phone or my laptop, she would find nothing. I poured the coffee I had been ignoring for the last hour and sat back down. The sun was coming up through the blinds, painting thin golden lines across the carpet. It was going to be a beautiful day. Clear skies, warm breeze, the kind of morning Maya would have called perfect for a walk in the park. I picked up my phone and searched for one thing: the best private investigator in the city who specialized in financial crimes. A name came up within the first 3 results: Ray Dalton, 14 years of experience, former forensic auditor turned private investigator. Client reviews described him as relentless, thorough, and impossible to fool. I dialed his number before I could talk myself out of it. He picked up on the second ring, voice rough, like he had been awake for hours already. "Dalton Investigations." "My name is Daniel Mercer," I said. "I'm a certified public accountant, and I think my wife is trying to frame me for financial fraud. I have audio evidence. Can you meet me today?" A pause, then, "How fast can you get downtown?" I grabbed my jacket and my car keys. On my way out the door, I glanced at the sticky note Maya had left on the hallway mirror 3 days ago. "You're brilliant. Don't forget it." I peeled it off and put it in my pocket. She was right about one thing. Ray Dalton looked like a man who had stopped caring about first impressions somewhere around his 40th birthday. Wrinkled sport coat, coffee stain on his left sleeve, reading glasses pushed up on his forehead like he forgot they were there. He was already sitting in a corner booth at a cafe 3 blocks from the federal courthouse when I walked in, a manila folder open in front of him and a black coffee going cold beside it. He didn't stand up, didn't shake my hand, just pointed at the chair across from him and said, "Sit. Talk." I sat down and slid my phone across the table with the audio file queued up. Ray put in one earbud, pressed play, and listened without moving a single muscle in his face. When it ended, he played it again. Then a third time. He pulled the earbud out and set the phone back in front of me. "The man's name," he said. "Victor. She say a last name?" "No." "Describe his voice." "Deep, confident, like someone used to giving orders and having them followed." Ray opened the manila folder he had been reading before I arrived and turned it around so I could see. Inside was a printed photograph of a man in his late 40s, sharp jawline, silver hair combed back, tailored charcoal suit, standing on the steps of a courthouse with 2 lawyers flanking him. "Victor Ashford," Ray said, "real estate developer, owns about 40 commercial properties across 3 states, luxury condos, retail plazas, a couple of resort developments along the coast. On paper, he's worth somewhere north of 200 million. I stared at the photograph. The man looked like he belonged on the cover of a business magazine. "You already knew about him?" "I've been tracking Ashford for 8 months on a separate case. He's under a sealed federal investigation for large-scale real estate fraud. inflating property values, laundering money through construction contracts, funneling profits into offshore accounts using shell companies registered under fake names. Ray leaned back in the booth. "Your wife didn't stumble into this by accident, Mr. Mercer. A man like Ashford doesn't work with amateurs." The words landed heavy. I had been holding on to a small, desperate hope that maybe Maya had been manipulated. Maybe Victor had pressured her into something she didn't fully understand. Maybe there was still a version of this story where she was a victim too. Ray killed that hope with his next sentence. "I pulled some preliminary records on the drive over here. Your wife has been linked to Ashford's financial network for close to a year. She's listed as an authorized signatory on 2 of his subsidiary companies, both registered in the last 10 months. Her name appears on wire transfer requests, notarized affidavits, and at least 1 offshore banking application filed through a firm in the Cayman Islands." A year? She had been doing this for a year. Every morning kiss, every dinner conversation, every time she asked me how my day went, all of it was a performance. A year of smiling at me across the breakfast table while quietly dismantling my entire life behind my back. I pulled out a folder of my own, printed copies of our household accounting ledgers, bank statements, and tax filings from the past 2 years. I had grabbed them from my office safe before driving downtown. I went through these on the way here. There are withdrawals I didn't authorize. Small amounts at first, 2,000 or 3,000 at a time, always from the secondary savings account I barely check. Over the last 4 months, they add up to just over $90,000. Ray flipped through the pages slowly, running his finger along the transaction lines. She kept the amounts low enough to avoid triggering automatic bank alerts. That's someone who knows what they're doing. He paused on a page near the back. "What's this entry here? The one marked property management fee?" I looked at it. I didn't make that entry. That's what I figured. She's been planting line items in your own books, Daniel. Small charges that look routine on the surface. Management fees, consulting payments, insurance premiums, all routed to companies that trace back to Ashford's network. When someone eventually audits your finances, every single one of those entries will look like you were knowingly funneling money into a fraud operation. I felt the floor tilt under me. This was the part of the recording that had scared me the most. Maya talking about a paper trail designed to make me look guilty. Hearing Ray confirm it with actual evidence made it real in a way the audio alone hadn't. "How much time do I have?" Ray closed the folder. "That depends on when she plans to file the forged documents. Once those hit a regulator's desk or a bank's compliance department, an investigation opens automatically. From that point, you're looking at frozen accounts, seized assets, and a very uncomfortable conversation with federal prosecutors who already have your name on every page." "So what do I do?" He looked at me for a long moment, studying my face like he was deciding whether I could handle what came next. "You do nothing. You go home. You answer her calls. You smile. You act like the man she thinks you are. Trusting, oblivious, easy to fool. The second she suspects you know anything, she accelerates the timeline and files everything before we can build a defense." "And what are you going to do?" "I'm going to pull every financial thread she's connected to and build a countercase so tight that when the time comes, the prosecutors will be looking at her, not you." He finished his cold coffee in one gulp. "But I need you to understand something, Daniel. This isn't a situation where you confront your wife and she cries and apologizes and you go to couples therapy. This woman is trying to send you to prison. If you tip her off, even once, a wrong look, a careless question, a door slammed too hard, you lose everything. Your money, your freedom, your reputation, all of it." I nodded. My hands were shaking under the table, but my voice stayed level. "I can do it." Ray slid a business card across the table. "My secure line. Memorize the number. Don't save it in your phone." I looked at the card, then back at him. She's going to text me today. Some excuse about last night. What do I say? Whatever a loving, clueless husband would say. He stood up, tucked the manila folder under his arm, and dropped a $10 bill on the table. Welcome to the longest performance of your life, Mr. Mercer. I spent the rest of the afternoon doing something I never thought I'd have to do, rehearsing how to be myself. I sat in my car in the cafe parking lot for 20 minutes after Ray left, practicing expressions in the rearview mirror. A relaxed smile, a concerned forehead crease, the casual shrug I always gave Maya when she apologized for running late. I had to become the man she thought I still was, a decent, trusting husband who would never in a million years suspect that the woman he loved was stealing everything he owned. The thing about lying is that most people are terrible at it. They overthink their words, avoid eye contact, talk too much to fill the silence. I had spent my career sitting across from clients who tried to lie about their finances, and I could spot the tells within seconds. A jaw that tightens before answering a question, fingers tapping on a table, an answer that comes a half-second too fast because it was rehearsed. I couldn't afford a single one of those tells. By the time I drove home, I had decided on a strategy. I wouldn't try to act normal. I would try to act worried. The kind of worried a husband should feel after his wife disappears for an entire night. That emotion was real. I could lean into it without faking anything. The trick was making sure the worry pointed in the right direction. She needed to believe I was worried about her safety, not about her loyalty. The house felt different when I walked back in. Same furniture, same photographs on the walls, same smell of the lavender candle she always left burning on the kitchen counter. But it all felt like a stage set now. Props arranged to create the illusion of a life that didn't exist anymore. I sat on the couch and waited. At 8 p.m., my phone buzzed. Maya's name appeared on the screen with a text message, the first contact in over 24 hours. Sorry, babe, my car broke down on the highway last night. Stayed at a little roadside hotel. Phone died, and I couldn't find a charger until this morning. Didn't want to worry you. Heading straight to a workshop out of town. Won't be back until tomorrow evening. Miss you. XO. I read it 3 times. The exclamation marks were a nice touch. Maya always used them when she was being cheerful, scattering them through her messages like confetti. She had clearly put thought into this. The dead phone explained why she didn't call, the roadside hotel explained the overnight absence, and the workshop bought her another full day away from home without raising suspicion. It was a clean lie, professional even. The kind of lie that didn't invite follow-up questions because every loose end was already tied up inside the message itself. I had been sitting at a commuter train station near our neighborhood for the last hour, parked on a bench under a flickering fluorescent light, watching strangers come and go. I chose the station because it was public and ordinary, a place where a man staring at his phone wouldn't attract any attention. I needed somewhere outside the house to think, somewhere Maya couldn't show up unexpectedly and catch me mid-reaction. I typed my reply slowly, deleting and rewriting it 4 times before settling on the right tone. No worries at all. I figured something like that happened. Glad you're safe. Hope you rested well. Love you. I hit send and put the phone face down on the bench beside me. A train pulled into the station, brakes hissing. A woman in a gray coat stepped off and walked past me without a glance. Somewhere on the platform, a teenager was playing music through a speaker, something with a heavy bass line that vibrated through the wooden bench slats. I picked my phone back up and opened the text thread again. I stared at her message and my reply sitting side by side on the screen. 2 people lying to each other simultaneously, both convinced they were the better liar. The difference was that she didn't know it was a competition. Ray had called me an hour earlier with an update. He had already pulled Maya's cell phone records through a contact at the carrier. Nothing illegal, just a favor from an old colleague in the fraud department who owed him one. The records showed that Maya's phone had been active the entire night she was supposedly stranded. She made 4 calls between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m., all to the same number. Ray traced it to a prepaid line registered under a fake name, but the billing address matched a luxury apartment complex downtown, one owned by Victor Ashford's real estate group. Her phone never died, her car never broke down, there was no roadside hotel. She spent the night at his place. I closed the text thread and opened my banking app instead. Everything looked normal on the surface. Checking account, primary savings, the joint investment fund we started 3 years ago when Maya convinced me we should plan for early retirement. The balances seemed fine at a glance, but I knew what to look for now. I tapped into the secondary savings account and scrolled through the last 4 months of transactions. There they were, the withdrawals Ray had identified. 2,000 here, 3,000 there, always on different dates, always with generic descriptions. Transfer, household. Transfer, insurance. Transfer, maintenance. Words designed to look boring, to discourage anyone from clicking deeper. I screenshot every single entry and sent them to Ray's secure email. Then I deleted the screenshots from my phone and cleared the recently deleted folder. A cold wind swept through the station, carrying the smell of diesel and wet concrete. I zipped my jacket up to my chin and watched another train arrive, its windows glowing yellow against the dark sky. Tomorrow morning, I was going to the bank. Maya and I had a joint safety deposit box at the Metropolitan branch downtown. She thought I had forgotten about it. We hadn't opened it together in over a year. But my name was still on the account as the primary holder, which meant I could access it without her signature. If she was hiding anything physical, documents, devices, hard copies of the forgeries, that box was the most logical place to stash them. She wouldn't risk keeping them at home, where I might stumble across them during a random drawer clean-out. She needed somewhere private, somewhere secure, somewhere she assumed I'd never think to check. She underestimated how well I knew her. I stood up from the bench, tossed my empty coffee cup into the trash, and walked back to my car. On the drive home, I practiced my smile one more time in the rearview mirror. The loving husband was ready for his close-up. The Metropolitan Safety Deposit Bank sat on the corner of 5th and Hargrove in the financial district, sandwiched between a law firm and an import brokerage. I had opened our joint box there 4 years ago when Maya and I bought our first property together. She wanted a safe place to store the deed, our marriage certificate, and a few pieces of jewelry her grandmother had left her. I remember her squeezing my hand in the lobby that day, saying it felt like we were building something permanent. I parked across the street at 9:45 a.m. and sat in the car for 15 minutes, going over the plan Ray and I had discussed on the phone that morning. "Don't rush," he had told me. "Walk in like you're there for something routine. If she's been using the box, the access log will show her visits. The bank won't volunteer that information, but as the primary account holder, you're entitled to request it. Ask casually. Don't make it sound like an investigation." At 10 a.m. sharp, I walked through the front doors. The lobby smelled like old carpet and printer toner. A security guard nodded at me from behind a desk near the entrance. I approached the vault services window and smiled at the woman behind the counter, a middle-aged clerk with a name tag that read Patricia. "Good morning. I'd like to access my safety deposit box, please. Account number 4471. Patricia typed the number into her terminal, verified my ID, and asked me to sign the access ledger. I signed and glanced at the entries above mine, while she turned to grab the master key. 3 visits were logged under Maya's name in the last 2 months. 1 6 weeks ago, 1 3 weeks ago, and 1 just 4 days before she disappeared. 4 days. She had been here 4 days ago, right around the time she would have been finalizing the forged documents. Patricia led me through a heavy steel door into the vault room, a narrow corridor lined floor to ceiling with numbered metal drawers. She used her master key alongside mine to unlock box 4471, slid the long metal tray out, and placed it on the viewing table in a private alcove. "Take your time, Mr. Mercer. Just press the call button on the wall when you're finished." She left. The door clicked shut behind her. I stood over the open box and looked inside. The property deed was still there. So was the marriage certificate and Maya's grandmother's jewelry, a pearl necklace and a pair of gold earrings wrapped in blue velvet. Everything I expected to find was exactly where it had always been. Underneath the velvet pouch, tucked against the bottom of the tray, were two items that had no business being there. The first was a phone, a cheap prepaid model, the kind you buy at a gas station counter with cash and no ID. The screen was locked, but when I pressed the power button, it lit up with a single notification: 14 unread messages. The second was a large brown envelope, unsealed, stuffed thick with papers. I opened the envelope and spread the documents across the viewing table. My hands were steady. My pulse was somewhere around 120, but my hands were steady. There were 6 pages in total. Each one bore the letterhead of my accounting firm, Mercer and Associates, and each one carried my signature at the bottom. My full legal name, my CPA license number, my company seal. To anyone unfamiliar with my handwriting, these documents would look completely authentic. But I had been signing my name on professional documents for 15 years. I knew my own signature the way a painter knows their own brushstrokes. And these were close, remarkably close, but wrong. The downstroke on the D in Daniel was too sharp. The loop on the M in Mercer was slightly wider than I ever made it. Whoever forged these had studied my signature carefully, probably from copies Maya had access to at home, but they hadn't quite nailed the muscle memory behind it. I read each document line by line. The first 2 were fabricated consulting agreements between my firm and a company called Greystone Holdings, a name I had never heard of, but immediately suspected was one of Victor Ashford's shell entities. The agreements described a series of financial advisory services I had supposedly provided, totaling $350,000 in billable fees. The next 3 were wire transfer authorizations, each one directing funds from my firm's operating account to Greystone Holdings' offshore banking partner. The amounts were staggered: 100,000, then 120, then 130, designed to look like installment payments spread over several months. The last page was a notarized affidavit, supposedly signed by me, confirming that all transactions were conducted voluntarily and in full compliance with federal financial regulations. It was a masterpiece of fraud. Every detail was calibrated to make it look like I had willingly participated in a money laundering scheme. If these documents reached a regulator's desk without context, I would be finished. No amount of explaining would undo the damage before my assets were frozen and my license was revoked. I didn't destroy them. Destroying evidence was exactly what a guilty person would do, and I needed to be the opposite of guilty. I needed to be the man who found the evidence, preserved it, and handed it over to the right people at the right time. I took out my phone and photographed every single page, front and back, close-ups of the forged signatures, wide shots showing the full layout of each document. I photographed the burner phone from every angle, including the notification screen. Then I placed everything back in the envelope, tucked it under the velvet pouch, and returned the tray to its original position inside the box. Nothing moved, nothing missing. If Maya came back to check, she would find everything exactly where she left it. I emailed the photographs to Ray's secure address and then uploaded the entire set to a cloud server Ray had arranged through a contact at the federal tax auditor's office. A sealed digital record, time-stamped and encrypted, sitting on a government-adjacent server where nobody could tamper with it. I pressed the call button. Patricia returned, locked the box, and walked me back to the lobby. "Everything in order, Mr. Mercer?" I gave her my best relaxed smile. "Perfect. Just needed to check on some paperwork." Outside, the sun was bright and the financial district was buzzing with the usual mid-morning foot traffic. I stood on the sidewalk and checked my phone. One new message from Maya. "Workshop is going great. Learning so much. We'll call you tonight. Love you, babe." I typed back without hesitation. So proud of you. Can't wait to hear all about it. Then I called Ray. I found it, I said. All of it. Burner phone, forged documents, the whole package, photographed and uploaded. A long exhale on the other end. Good. Now here's the next part. She just invited you somewhere tomorrow, didn't she? I paused. How did you know that? Check your email. She sent you something 20 minutes ago. I opened my inbox. There it was. A message from Maya, cheerful and casual, asking me to meet her tomorrow evening at the Grand Coastal Resort Marina, about 2 hours outside the city. She wanted me to sign some routine home insurance documents she had been meaning to finalize. I'll have a wire ready for you by morning, Ray said. When you walk into that resort, every word she says gets recorded. The Grand Coastal Resort Marina was the kind of place that made you feel underdressed the moment you pulled into the parking lot. White stucco buildings with terracotta roofs, palm trees lining a cobblestone walkway that curved down toward a private beach, sailboats bobbing in the harbor, their masts clinking softly in the late afternoon breeze. The whole property looked like it belonged in a travel magazine, and I couldn't help wondering how many of Victor Ashford's stolen dollars had passed through a place like this. I arrived at 5:30 p.m., 30 minutes early. Ray was already there, parked in a grey sedan at the far end of the guest lot, close enough to monitor the resort entrance, but far enough to stay invisible. We had met that morning at his office, where he fitted me with a recording device so small I almost lost it between my fingers. Adhesive mic, he said, pressing it against the inside of my shirt collar. Picks up everything within 20 feet. Audio feeds directly to a receiver in my car. You don't need to press anything, adjust anything, or even think about it. Just talk normally and let her do the rest. What if she gets suspicious? She won't. She's not looking for a trap because she doesn't believe you're capable of setting one. That's your biggest advantage right now, Daniel. She thinks she's smarter than you. I checked my collar one more time in the rearview mirror, straightened my jacket, and walked into the resort. Maya was waiting for me in the main lobby, standing near a marble fountain in a white sundress, her hair loose around her shoulders, a pair of oversized sunglasses pushed up on her head. She looked beautiful. She always looked beautiful. That was the cruelest part of all of this, that the woman trying to ruin my life still made my chest tighten when she smiled at me. There he is! She crossed the lobby in 3 quick steps and kissed me on the cheek, both hands resting on my shoulders. I missed you. How was the drive? Long, I said, smiling. But this place is incredible. How did you find it? A colleague recommended it. She said the seafood restaurant here is amazing. Maya looped her arm through mine and walked me toward the outdoor terrace. I figured we could grab dinner, sign those insurance papers, and make a little evening out of it. We haven't had a proper date night in forever. A date night? She actually said that with a straight face. I let her lead me through the terrace doors and out onto a wide stone patio overlooking the marina. The sunset was spilling orange and gold across the water, and a jazz trio was playing softly near the bar. Couples sat at candlelit tables, leaning close, murmuring to each other over wine glasses. We sat at a table near the glass railing. Maya ordered a bottle of white wine and started chatting about her workshop, the sessions she attended, the people she met, the keynote speaker who apparently gave a talk about workplace resilience. Every detail was specific and polished. She had done her homework. Sounds like it was worth the trip, I said. It really was. I feel so energized. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. I'm sorry about the phone situation. I know you must have been worried. I was, I said, and I meant it, just for different reasons than she assumed. About 40 minutes into dinner, Maya excused herself to use the restroom. Order me the grilled sea bass if the waiter comes back, she said, dropping her napkin on her chair. I'll be right back. She walked inside. I watched her disappear through the terrace doors and waited. She didn't go to the restroom. Through the floor-to-ceiling glass panels separating the terrace from the resort's interior lounge, I had a clear line of sight into the lobby corridor. Maya reappeared on the other side of the glass, walking quickly toward a man standing near the concierge desk. Victor Ashford. He was taller than I expected, 6'2", maybe 6'3", wearing a navy blazer with no tie, his silver hair catching the lobby light. He stood with the kind of effortless composure that comes from decades of being the most powerful person in every room. When Maya approached, he didn't hug her. He barely acknowledged her with more than a nod. This was business. Maya reached into her handbag and pulled out a slim document folder. She handed it to Victor, who opened it and flipped through the pages without changing expression. Then she leaned in close and said something I couldn't hear from where I was sitting. I didn't need to hear it. The mic on my collar was picking up everything within range, and Ray was recording the audio feed from the parking lot. Whatever Maya was saying, it was being captured. What I could see through the glass told me enough. Maya was animated, confident, gesturing with her hands the way she always did when she was proud of something. She pointed at the folder, then tapped her temple with one finger, a gesture I recognized. She used it when she was bragging about outsmarting someone. I had seen her do it 100 times during game nights with friends, after winning a round of cards or solving a puzzle first. She was doing it now, about me. Victor closed the folder, tucked it under his arm, and said something brief. Maya laughed, that same laugh from the audio recording, the one that used to make me fall in love with her. It sounded completely different now. Their exchange lasted less than 3 minutes. Victor walked toward the elevator bank without looking back. Maya smoothed her dress, checked her reflection in a decorative mirror on the wall, and headed back toward the terrace. I picked up the wine list and pretended to study it. She slid back into her chair, slightly flushed, slightly breathless. "Sorry, there was a line. Did you order?" "Just did. Sea bass for you, the steak for me." "Perfect." She poured herself more wine and lifted her glass. "To us." I touched my glass to hers. The crystal made a clean, bright sound. "To us," I said. Somewhere in the parking lot, Ray was listening to everything, and tomorrow, every word from this evening would end up in a federal prosecutor's evidence file. Maya sipped her wine and smiled at me across the candlelight like a woman without a single secret in the world. I smiled back like a man who didn't know any better. Dinner was slow and deliberate. Maya stretched every course like she was savoring a vacation, commenting on the bread basket, asking the waiter about the chef's background, insisting we try the resort's signature dessert after the main course. She was in no rush. She had all night to get what she came for. I matched her pace, keeping the conversation light. We talked about a kitchen renovation we had been postponing for months, a friend's wedding coming up in October, a documentary she had watched on the plane to her workshop. Normal couple things. The kind of small talk that fills an evening when two people are comfortable with each other. Every word out of her mouth was a lie wrapped in warmth, and every word out of mine was a calculated response designed to keep her comfortable. We were two people performing the same marriage from opposite sides of a stage, and neither one of us was going to break character first. Around 8:15 p.m., the waiter cleared our dessert plates. Maya reached into her handbag and pulled out a second folder, thinner than the one she had handed Victor earlier, with a blue plastic cover and a white label on the front that read, "Home Insurance, Annual Renewal." "I almost forgot," she said, placing it on the table between us. "I've been meaning to get these signed for weeks. Our home insurance policy is up for renewal, and the agent needs both signatures before the end of the month." She opened the folder and spread 3 stapled documents across the white tablecloth. Each one had yellow sticky tabs marking the signature lines, with little arrows pointing to where I was supposed to sign. It looked organized, professional, thoughtful, like a wife who had taken care of all the boring paperwork so her busy husband wouldn't have to deal with it. I picked up the first document and started reading. The cover page was real. She had used an actual insurance renewal form as the outer shell. The company name, the policy number, our home address, all of it checked out. If I had been the man she thought I was, I would have skimmed the first page, trusted the rest, and signed on every yellow tab without reading another line. I turned to the second page. This was where the trick lived. Buried under the insurance formatting were clauses that had nothing to do with home coverage. The language shifted from standard policy terms into financial authorization territory, granting power of attorney over my personal accounts, authorizing the transfer of assets to a third-party holding company, and waiving my right to contest any transactions executed under this agreement for a period of 12 months. She had hidden a financial death warrant inside a home insurance renewal. "Everything look okay?" Maya asked, her chin resting on her hand, watching me with an easy smile. "Yeah, just reading through the fine print. You know me." I gave a small laugh. The accountant who can't sign anything without reading every word. "That's why I love you," she said. "So thorough." I turned to the third document. Same structure, legitimate cover page, poisoned interior. This one authorized the liquidation of my investment portfolio and redirected the proceeds to an entity called Greystone Holdings, the same shell company from the forged documents in the safety deposit box. Maya sipped her wine and checked her phone while I read. She wasn't nervous. She wasn't watching my face for micro-expressions. She was completely relaxed, confident that the man across from her would do exactly what she expected: skim, sign, and move on. I set the documents down and reached for my briefcase. "Let me grab a pen," I said. "I think mine is in here somewhere." I unzipped the side pocket and pulled out a ballpoint pen, the same one I used for client meetings. What Maya couldn't see, because my briefcase was angled away from her on the booth seat, was that I also pulled out a slim envelope I had prepared that morning at Ray's office. Inside were 3 substitute pages, documents I had drafted myself using the same formatting, the same fonts, and the same layout as Maya's originals. The difference was in the content. My versions replaced her authorization clauses with audit rider language, standard financial disclosure terms that, when signed, would function as a binding acknowledgement of every offshore transaction linked to her name and Victor's network. In accounting terms, it was a self-certification of tax liability. In plain terms, she would be signing a confession. I had practiced the swap 12 times at Ray's desk that morning. Slide the original pages out from under the staple, insert the replacements, press the staple flat. The whole move took 4 seconds and required one hand. Ray had timed me. "Found it," I said, holding up the pen. I pulled the documents toward me, angled the folder slightly so the cover blocked Maya's view, and made the switch. The original pages went into my briefcase. My replacements slid into their place under the staples. Then I signed. I wrote my name on each yellow tab with a hand that trembled just enough to look convincing. A stressed husband, overwhelmed by finances, trusting his wife to handle the details. I even paused on the last signature and rubbed my forehead. "You okay?" Maya asked. "Yeah, just tired. Long day." She reached across the table and took my hand. "We're almost done with all this paperwork stuff, I promise. After this, no more boring admin for at least 6 months." I managed a tired smile and slid the folder back across the table. Maya picked it up, flipped to each signature page to confirm I had signed, and tucked the folder into her handbag with a satisfied nod. She didn't read the pages. She didn't check the language. She just verified the signatures were there and moved on. "Thank you, babe. I know this stuff is tedious." "Anything for you," I said. She had no idea what she had just signed. The moment those documents entered the legal record, and they would because Maya was meticulous about filing paperwork, they would serve as a self-authenticated admission, tying her directly to every fraudulent transaction in Victor Ashford's network. No lawyer could argue she signed under duress. No judge would believe she didn't read her own documents. She had presented them willingly, filed them voluntarily, and confirmed the signatures herself. Maya waved the waiter over and ordered 2 glasses of champagne. "To getting the boring stuff done," she said, lifting her glass. I lifted mine. "To getting it done." The champagne was cold and dry and tasted like the beginning of the end. The regional office of the Federal Bureau of Financial Crimes occupied the 9th floor of a glass tower in the Civic District, about 4 blocks from the courthouse where I had once testified as an expert witness in a tax fraud case. I remembered feeling confident that day, sitting in the witness box, explaining financial discrepancies to a jury, breaking down complex numbers into simple language. I was the professional in the room, the man with all the answers. Walking into that same building as a potential victim felt completely different. Ray met me in the lobby at 10:45 a.m. He was carrying a leather briefcase that looked older than I was, stuffed thick with printed documents, USB drives, and a portable hard drive he had used to compile everything we had gathered over the past 3 days. "You ready?" he asked. "Does it matter?" "No, but I like to ask." He adjusted his reading glasses and led me toward the elevator. "I've already spoken with the lead prosecutor on the Ashford case. Her name is Diane Cho. She's been building a file on him for over a year, but she's been short on cooperating witnesses and direct financial evidence. What we're about to hand her fills both of those gaps." We stepped off the elevator on the 9th floor and walked through a set of double doors into a conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city skyline. 3 people were already seated at a long rectangular table. A woman in a charcoal suit at the head, flanked by 2 men in shirt sleeves with legal pads open in front of them. Diane Cho stood when we entered. She was in her early 50s, compact and sharp-eyed, with the kind of expression that told you she had heard every excuse in the world and believed none of them. She shook my hand firmly and gestured for us to sit. "Mr. Mercer, thank you for coming in. Ray has given me an overview of your situation, but I'd like to hear it from you directly. Start from the beginning." So I did. I told her about the night Maya didn't come home, the anonymous email, the 42-second audio recording, the meeting with Ray, the alibi text, the safety deposit box, the burner phone, the forged documents, the resort dinner, the document swap. I laid it all out in chronological order, the way I would present a financial audit to a board of directors. Clean, factual, and stripped of emotion. Every time I felt anger rising in my chest, I pushed it back down and stuck to the timeline. When I finished, Diane leaned back in her chair and looked at Ray. "The audio from the resort, how clean is it?" Ray opened his briefcase and set a portable speaker on the table. He pressed play. Maya's voice filled the conference room, her conversation with Victor in the lobby, captured through the glass by the mic on my collar. The audio was slightly muffled from the distance, but her words were clear enough. She talked about the documents she had prepared for me to sign, described how she had structured the authorization clauses to look like insurance language, and mentioned Greystone Holdings by name twice. Then came the part that made one of the junior prosecutors stop writing and look up. Maya's voice, casual and light, almost laughing. "He signed everything without blinking. 6 years of marriage, and he still thinks I handle the paperwork because I'm being a good wife." Diane pressed pause. The room was quiet for a moment. "And the swap documents," she said, turning to me. "Walk me through the language you used." I opened my own folder and placed my drafted pages on the table alongside copies of Maya's originals. I walked Diane through the substitution line by line. Where Maya's clauses authorized asset transfers to Greystone, mine replaced them with standard audit rider disclosures. I explained how the language functioned as a self-certification of tax liability, binding the signatory, in this case Maya, to every transaction referenced in the document. "She filed these herself?" Diane asked. "She will. She files everything. Insurance documents, property records, tax forms. She keeps copies of everything in a home filing cabinet and submits originals to our financial advisor. The moment she submits these, the audit riders become part of the legal record with her signature on them." Diane exchanged a glance with one of her colleagues. He nodded once. "Mr. Mercer, here's where we are," Diane said. "We've been investigating Victor Ashford's real estate network for 14 months. We have evidence of inflated property valuations, offshore fund routing, and fraudulent construction contracts. What we've been missing is someone on the inside, a cooperating witness, or a direct link between Ashford and the operational mechanics of the fraud. Your wife is that link. She opened a file on the table and turned it toward me. Inside was a surveillance photograph. Maya walking into the lobby of a downtown apartment building. The same one Ray had traced through her phone records. The timestamp was from 3 weeks ago.
We've had eyes on Ashford's known associates for months. Your wife appeared in our surveillance 6 weeks ago, but we didn't have enough context to understand her role. Now we do. Ray leaned forward. Tell him about the flight. Diane folded her hands on the table. Our intelligence indicates that Ashford has booked a private charter out of Northridge Airfield for tomorrow afternoon. 2 passengers listed, Victor Ashford and a woman matching your wife's description. The destination is a Caribbean territory with no extradition agreement. Based on the financial trail your evidence confirms, we believe they intend to move the remaining funds offshore and disappear. My stomach tightened. Tomorrow. They were planning to leave the country tomorrow. The moment your wife attempts to route those funds through the offshore channel, Diane continued, an automated federal freeze will activate on every account connected to Greystone Holdings. The money locks in escrow instantly. They won't be able to touch a dollar. And the airfield? Diane closed the folder. We'll have a tactical unit in position before they arrive. When they board that tarmac, they're walking into a sealed perimeter. She looked at me across the table with an expression that was almost sympathetic, almost warm, but held back by professionalism. I have to ask, Mr. Mercer, are you prepared for what happens next? This is your wife. Regardless of what she's done, watching her get arrested is going to be difficult. I thought about the sticky note on the hallway mirror, the champagne toast at the resort, the way she squeezed my hand at the dinner table while planning to send me to prison. I'll be there, I said. Diane nodded. Then we'll see you at Northridge. The farewell letter arrived at 1:47 p.m. I was sitting in the passenger seat of Ray's sedan, parked inside a maintenance garage at the edge of Northridge Airfield, when my phone buzzed with a long text message from Maya. I stared at her name on the screen for a few seconds before opening it, already knowing what it would say before I read a single word. Daniel, by the time you read this, I'll be gone. I've tried to make this marriage work for years, but the truth is, I can't keep pretending anymore. You were so consumed by your work, your spreadsheets, your clients, that you never once stopped to ask if I was happy. I gave you everything and got nothing in return. The financial situation you're about to discover is entirely your own doing. Years of reckless investments and poor decisions that you hid from me while pretending everything was fine. I'm not going to let your mistakes drag me down. I deserve better. Don't try to find me. Goodbye. I read it twice. The first time, something deep in my chest cracked. The last thin wall I had been holding up since that audio file played 4 days ago. The second time, the crack sealed over with something harder. She wasn't just leaving. She was setting the narrative. When investigators came knocking, when the bank accounts showed up empty, when the forged documents surfaced, this text message would be her alibi. The overwhelmed wife fleeing a financially reckless husband. She had written it like a victim statement, every sentence designed to paint me as the cause of my own destruction. Ray glanced over at my phone. The goodbye letter? Right on schedule. He checked his watch. Ashford's jet landed 20 minutes ago. Ground crew is fueling it now. Estimated departure window is between 3 and 3:30 p.m. Through the garage's open bay door, I could see the far end of the airfield, a single runway flanked by 2 private hangars, a fuel depot, and a low concrete building that served as the charter terminal. A white Gulfstream jet sat on the tarmac near the larger hangar, its cabin door open and a set of folding stairs extended to the ground. 2 men in coveralls moved around the aircraft, checking the landing gear and connecting a fuel line. It looked peaceful from here. Quiet, even. A sunny afternoon at a private airfield, the kind of place where wealthy people boarded planes to weekend getaways without a second thought. Nobody walking across that tarmac would have guessed that 4 unmarked federal vehicles were positioned behind the hangars, engines off, waiting for a signal. Ray's phone buzzed. He read the message and nodded. Cho's team is in position. 2 vehicles behind the north hangar, 2 behind the fuel depot. Tactical unit is staged inside the charter terminal. The moment both targets are on the tarmac and clear of the aircraft, they move. Both targets, I repeated. Hearing Maya described that way, as a target, made it feel final in a way that nothing else had. You okay? I didn't answer that. Where do you want me? Right here. You stay in this garage until it's over. Cho's orders. You're a cooperating witness, not an agent. If something goes sideways on the tarmac, she doesn't want you anywhere near it. I nodded and settled deeper into my seat. The garage smelled like motor oil and warm concrete. A small radio on the dashboard crackled with static. Ray had tuned it to the frequency Cho's team was using to coordinate the operation. Every few minutes, a voice would check in with a position update. North unit holding, South unit holding, terminal unit standing by. At 2:50 p.m., a black SUV pulled through the airfield's main gate and drove slowly toward the charter terminal. Its windows were tinted dark enough that I couldn't make out the passengers from this distance, but I didn't need to. Ray lifted a pair of binoculars and tracked the vehicle as it curved around the terminal building and parked near the Gulf Stream. That's Ashford's car, he said, registered to his personal fleet. The driver's door opened first. A large man in a dark suit stepped out, a bodyguard, thick-necked and professional, scanning the tarmac before opening the rear passenger door. Victor Ashford emerged, adjusting his blazer, sunglasses catching the afternoon light. He walked toward the jet with the unhurried stride of a man who believed the world arranged itself around his schedule. Then the other rear door opened. Maya stepped out. She was wearing travel clothes, linen pants, a fitted jacket, a wide-brimmed hat that shadowed her face. She carried a large leather tote bag over one shoulder and pulled a rolling suitcase behind her with the other hand. She looked like a woman leaving for a resort vacation, relaxed and certain and completely free. Victor waited for her at the base of the jet stairs. He took her suitcase and handed it to one of the ground crew, who loaded it into the cargo hold. Maya climbed the first 2 steps, then stopped and turned back to say something to Victor. He smiled, a rare, genuine smile, and placed his hand on the small of her back as they turned to board together. That's when the sirens hit. 4 vehicles came around the hangars simultaneously, 2 from the north, 2 from the south, lights flashing, engines roaring across the flat tarmac. They converged on the Gulf Stream in a wide arc, cutting off every possible exit route. Doors flew open before the vehicles had fully stopped. Agents in tactical vests poured out from both sides, spreading into a perimeter around the aircraft with practiced speed. A 5th vehicle, a black sedan, rolled out from behind the charter terminal and stopped directly in front of the jet stairs, blocking the path to the cabin door. Diane Cho's voice carried across the tarmac through a loudspeaker mounted on the lead vehicle. Victor Ashford and Maya Mercer, this is the Federal Bureau of Financial Crimes. Step away from the aircraft. Keep your hands where we can see them. Maya froze on the second step. Her hand gripped the stair railing so tightly her knuckles went white. Victor's smile vanished. His bodyguard raised both hands immediately, trained enough to know that resistance against a federal operation only added charges. The ground crew scattered. The fuel line was disconnected in seconds. The jet's engines, which had started to whine toward departure, powered down with a long, dying hum. Nobody was flying anywhere. I sat in the garage and watched it all unfold through the open bay door, 200 yards away, close enough to see the shapes, but far enough to feel like I was watching a movie about someone else's life. Ray had the binoculars pressed to his face, giving me a low play-by-play. Ashford is stepping down. Hands up. He's cooperating. Smart man. His lawyer probably rehearsed this scenario with him. A pause. Your wife hasn't moved. I leaned forward and squinted through the windshield. Maya was still standing on the jet stairs, one hand on the railing, the other clutching her tote bag against her chest. She was looking around the tarmac like she was searching for a gap in the perimeter, a door left open. Some exit nobody had thought to cover. There wasn't one. She's coming down, Ray said quietly, slowly, one step at a time. I watched her descend. Each step looked heavier than the last, like she was sinking into something she couldn't climb back out of. When her feet touched the tarmac, 2 agents approached her from either side. Ray lowered the binoculars and looked at me. "You still want to do this?" I opened the car door. "I have to." I walked across the tarmac with the sun on my face and the sound of idling engines filling the air around me. 200 yards had felt like nothing from inside the garage. On foot, it stretched into the longest walk of my life. Diane Cho's team had formed a tight perimeter around the base of the jet stairs. Victor Ashford stood in the center of it, hands behind his back, chin lifted, looking more annoyed than afraid. His bodyguard was already seated in the back of a federal vehicle with the door open, cooperating without a word. Victor had clearly been through high-pressure situations before. His face carried the flat calm of a man who was already thinking about which lawyer to call. Maya was a different story. She was standing a few feet away from Victor, flanked by 2 agents, her tote bag confiscated and sitting on the ground near the jet stairs. Her wide-brimmed hat had fallen off at some point and lay upside down on the tarmac, rocking gently in the breeze. Her face was flushed, her breathing fast and shallow, and her eyes were darting between the agents, Victor, and the perimeter vehicles, like an animal measuring the walls of a cage. Then she started talking. "This was all him," she said, pointing at Victor. Her voice came out high and uneven, cracking at the edges. "He forced me into this. I didn't have a choice. He threatened me, told me if I didn't cooperate, he'd destroy my family. I was scared. I did what he told me to do because I was afraid of what would happen if I didn't." Victor turned his head slowly and looked at her. His expression didn't change. No surprise, no anger. Just a cold, measured observation, like a chess player watching his opponent tip over their own king. "He controlled everything," Maya continued, her voice gaining speed. "The accounts, the transfers, the shell companies, all of it was his operation. I was just following instructions. I'm a victim here. You have to understand that. I'm a victim." She was crying now, real tears streaming down her cheeks, smearing the mascara she had applied that morning while packing for a Caribbean escape. She grabbed the arm of the nearest agent and looked up at him with wide, desperate eyes. "Please, you have to believe me. I never wanted any of this." For a moment, the tarmac went quiet. The agents exchanged glances. Diane Cho stood near the lead vehicle with her arms crossed, watching Maya's performance without expression. Then Victor laughed. It started low, a dry, bitter sound that barely qualified as amusement, and built into something colder. He shook his head slowly, like a man watching a movie he had already seen the ending of. "You want to play it that way?" he said. "Fine." He looked at Diane. "Inside pocket of my blazer, left side. Take it out." One of the agents patted him down and retrieved a slim black device from his jacket, a digital voice recorder, the kind journalists carry for interviews. Victor nodded toward it. "Press play." Diane took the recorder, held it up, and pressed the button. Maya's voice filled the tarmac. The recording was crisp and clear, far better quality than the anonymous audio file I had received 4 days ago. It captured a conversation between Maya and Victor from what sounded like a restaurant or a lounge, glasses clinking in the background, soft music underneath. Maya was doing most of the talking. She walked Victor through the entire plan, step by step, detail by detail, with the confidence of someone presenting a business proposal. How she had spent months studying my financial patterns, learning the rhythms of my accounts, identifying which signatures she could replicate and which documents she could forge without triggering red flags. She described the shell company structure she wanted Victor to build, the offshore routing she had researched, and the timeline for transferring the assets before I noticed anything missing. At one point, Victor's voice interrupted. "And if he catches on?" Maya's reply was immediate. "He won't. And if he does, the paper trail puts him in prison, not me. I've made sure of that. Every document leads back to his name, his firm, his license. By the time anyone sorts it out,
We'll be on a beach somewhere with new bank accounts." The recording kept playing for another 30 seconds, but nobody on that tarmac was listening anymore. Every agent, every prosecutor, every set of eyes had shifted to Maya. The crying stopped. The desperate grip on the agent's arm loosened.
Her face went through something I had never seen before. A rapid collapse of every mask she had ever worn, one after another, like layers of paint peeling off a wall in fast motion. The scared wife, the loyal partner, the reluctant accomplice. All of it fell away, and what was left underneath was a woman standing on hot concrete in the afternoon sun, realizing that every exit had been sealed. She looked at Victor with pure hatred. He looked back with nothing at all. Diane nodded to her agents. 2 of them stepped forward and placed handcuffs on Victor first. He didn't resist. He extended his wrists like he was offering a handshake, and the cuffs clicked shut with a clean metallic sound. They guided him into the back of a federal vehicle, and he disappeared behind tinted glass without a word. Then they turned to Maya. She didn't extend her wrists. She didn't cooperate. She pulled back, twisting her arms, shaking her head. "Wait, wait. You don't understand. I can explain. Just let me explain." The agents were patient. They gave her a moment. Then they placed the cuffs on her gently, one wrist at a time, and began walking her toward a second vehicle. That's when she saw me. I was standing about 30 feet away, just outside the perimeter line, my hands in my jacket pockets. I hadn't said a word. I hadn't needed to. I was simply there, visible, upright, watching. Maya's entire body locked. Her feet stopped moving. The agents had to pause because she wouldn't take another step. She stared at me across the tarmac with an expression I will carry with me for the rest of my life. It wasn't anger. It wasn't guilt. It was the slow, sickening recognition of a person realizing they had been outplayed by someone they never considered a threat. Her mouth opened slightly, like she was about to say something. My name, maybe. An accusation. A plea. I'll never know, because nothing came out. She just stood there, looking at me, her lips parted and her eyes filling with something that might have been shame, or might have been fury, or might have been both at once. I held her gaze for 5 seconds, then I turned around and walked back across the tarmac toward the maintenance garage, where Ray was leaning against the sedan, arms folded, watching me with a look that sat somewhere between respect and sympathy. "How do you feel?" he asked. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out the sticky note I had peeled off the hallway mirror 4 days ago, the one Maya had left for me, back when I still believed every word she said. "You're brilliant. Don't forget it." I folded it in half, dropped it into a trash can beside the garage door, and looked at Ray. Like an accountant who just closed his hardest case. Ray almost smiled. Almost. I got in my car, started the engine, and drove toward the airfield gate. In the rearview mirror, I could see the federal vehicles pulling away from the Gulf Stream, lights flashing, carrying 2 people toward a future they never planned for. The jet sat empty on the tarmac, stairs still extended, cabin door still open, going nowhere. I merged onto the highway and rolled down the window. The late afternoon air rushed in, warm and fast, filling the car with the smell of cut grass and open road. For the first time in 4 days, I didn't check my phone. I didn't rehearse a smile. I didn't calculate my next move. I just drove.